Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to show you two ways to scan negative film, so color negative and black and white negative. The first way I'll show you is using the inbuilt Epson scan profiles, which you can choose for individual film types, which can work okay for quick scans, but the quality isn't always as controllable as you would like. So I'll show you an alternative and much more long-winded process which you could try for finished images that you want to scan at a much higher resolution and print in a very fine way. So what you're seeing now is the preview of two negatives. These are large format negatives. Your negatives will look smaller depending on the format. At the top we've got a color negative, and at the bottom a black and white negative. You'll see when the preview stops that the preview image will be converted. That conversion is based on this color negative film type that's been selected here. And it's automatically tried to see the frame of the image, which hardly ever works in Epson Scan. So if we just go back to full size here on the preview image, you can see that it's cropped the image in a bad way. If we just unclick thumbnail here, we can get back to an overview. So just while that preview is preparing, I'll take you through some of the features in Epson Scan. So you've got different modes. The professional mode is the only one you should work in because it gives you all the options you want. You can save settings here. This is a very important dialogue here, your original document type and film type. So at the moment we're using film with film holder. You can select reflective if you were scanning something from a book or a print. And then we've got film with film area guide. You only use that if you're scanning directly from the glass, not using a holder, and it's usually only used for very large format film like 10 by 8 inch film. You've got your color negative setting here at the moment. You could change to positive film, and then these two negatives would look like negatives. At the moment in the color negative setting film, it's trying to convert as best as it can the image as a color negative image, but you can see that the color is quite bad, and the black and white image looks very sepia. So using either of these negative modes, color negative or black and white negative, you're using the scanner software to convert your negative into a positive. So there's a lot of decisions that the scanning software is making there, and they're not always good decisions. So I'm just clicking on the preview image and drawing a marquee around it, and you'll see that the image has instantly changed. So the way it converts negatives is based on the image within that, the image data within that marquee. If you want to zoom into that image, you can do another preview and it will zoom into that highlighted marquee, which is often useful if you're doing adjustments to the image. Just going back to the interface, destination is very important. So you've got image type, 24-bit color. So that's giving you the number of bits per channel. We're scanning in RGB, red, green, and blue. There's 8 bits per channel times 3, that's 24. What you really want to be scanning in is 48-bit color if they're important images that you're going to then change in Photoshop. Because that's going to give you much more latitude, much more color information and tone information with which to change the image later. So you'll see by changing the amount of white area included in this frame, the image will actually change, which is hard to control. So if you are going to use this color negative mode and let the software choose how the colors are interpreted, you do have a little bit of control. You can go down here to adjustments and you get a histogram. And you can see here already in the histogram that the scanner software has decided to crop or clip the white point and the black point not so much, but the white point has been clipped quite heavily. So that's what the scanner's decided. We can override some of this. So because of a setting, I'm not able to select the grey point. It's just saying I can't select anything other than something in the image. So with the grey point eyedropper selected, we can click on things that we think should be neutral grey in the image, which can be a useful thing, but it's a bit all over the place, as you can see. You can also choose your black point, so you could choose a shadow area there. You can also choose your white point, so the thing that should be clipped to white. As you can see, it's a bit pokey on this little preview here, so that's not the way I like to scan color negative. If we go back to the overall preview, I'm going to change the film type to positive. What that's going to do is literally just give us a negative, and we're going to invert that in Photoshop. Now what you saw with the color image, the way it clipped the image and the way the color was a bit all over the place, similar things happen with the black and white negative mode. The scanner software is going to clip the image quite badly for you. So to have control over that, the best thing, in my opinion, is to convert the image to a positive in Photoshop. Now to do that, we need to do a number of things. The first thing is we need to go to configuration, and we need to go back here to color. At the moment it's on color control, continuous auto exposure. Color sync, ignore, no color correction is what we want. Okay, now you'll see the image preview has just changed dramatically because it's not applying any of its own adjustments, and you can see here that all the adjustments here are grayed out, including unsharp mask, grain reduction, all of these automated features that the scanner has that generally don't do quite a good job. So what we're going to do is draw around our negative, and I always leave a little bit of space so that we can crop later. The other thing we're going to choose is 48-bit color. We want as much color information as we can when we're in Photoshop. So in Photoshop, it sees things as either 8-bit or 16-bit. Again, it's literally just the way different programs use that color information. Some of them displayed as 16, some 48. Now, resolution here, so these scanners can scan these ridiculous resolutions that aren't really going to do you much good. 4800 dpi is about as high as you should go, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to use a low resolution. Now, this resolution is talking about 1:1. So if we scanned this currently at this current size, so it's telling us that it's 12 centimeters by 9.5, which is the size of a 4.5 negative at 300 dpi, that's going to give us a 9 megabyte TIFF file, which is really quite small. So that means you could print this image at 300 dpi at this size. So that's not going to be much use for anyone unless you're just proofing and you want to do some very quick scans. I would suggest the minimum resolution would be about 1200 to 2400 dpi, just depending on what you're going to use it for. For finished files that you know you want to print as large as you can and retain a lot of detail, 4800 can be useful, and we can always get rid of some of that excess resolution in Photoshop later. So for this exercise, I would just use 1200 dpi because that's going to be nice and quick. So we click scan, we get this dialog box, we can choose where to save it to the desktop. And I'm just going to call it color neg test. Image format's really important here. It's scanning to PDF. That's not going to be much good for anyone. If we're to adapt the image in Photoshop, multi-TIFF, avoid, just a straight TIFF here is useful. Obviously JPEG if you're just doing quick proofs and maybe using the color negative or black and white negative mode. Open image folder after scanning is useful to have so that you can review the image straight away. And this will take some time. So here's a color negative that I've scanned as a positive using those steps I outlined. So we'll just open that in Photoshop. So it's come up with this error message saying that it has a missing RGB profile. Now, Adobe 98 is a generic profile that is used everywhere in the photographic industry, so we'll just go with that. So as you can see, the image is not the right orientation, so we can go up to image, image rotation, and clockwise. I can also see that this image is back to front, so I'm going to flip the canvas horizontal, which is also through that image menu. There we go. Now, it's in negative mode, so we have to invert the image. So you go Image Adjustments, Invert, or Command I. So we can see the image is looking pretty terrible though, it's blue. So the first step is to do a curves adjustment. So if you don't have your adjustment box up, you need to activate that here in Window, and Adjustments there. And the curves adjustment box is this one here with the little line going through a grid. Now, this is an adjustment layer, so it sits on top of the original image and is what we call non-destructive editing. It's not actually changing the original image, it's sitting on top of it. So that's a good way to work with important images that you might want to try various things to. Now the first step is to look at our curves box. So we've got a black eyedropper, a middle grey eyedropper, and a white point eyedropper. The first thing we want to do is set the black point. So we need to double click on that eyedropper and we get this dialog box. Now I've already gone through and changed the RGB numbers. So the RGB numbers are here. 10 is almost black, 0 is complete black, no information. 255 is completely white or clipped depending on the channel. So we'll leave it at 10. I use 10 because it looks almost completely black, but if we use that as the clipping level, we're still retaining some information. You can set that higher or lower. So we'll just go with 10 in the red channel, 10 in the green channel, and 10 in the blue channel for our clipping. So now I've accidentally clicked a point, so you can see the image has gone very dark. So wherever we click with the eyedropper, it's saying that's black. So if we click on something very bright, it's telling us that that's black. If we click on something that is dark already, that's going to give us a much better outcome. So that still looks pretty terrible, but I know that the shadow underneath this rock, if we zoom in, so this shadow here should be a dark tone, almost completely black without any information. But our image is still looking pretty terrible, so we now need to tell the image where we want the grey point to be. So the grey point, you don't need to change the RGB numbers. It should always be set as middle grey, a bit like your light meters. So we're going to select the grey point up here and click on something in the image that we want to be a neutral grey. So this rock in the foreground might work. So that's actually worked pretty well. We could click on something else in the image. This bit of concrete over here hasn't had much change. But the image is still looking quite dark. So the next thing is to choose our white point. So normally the white point is set to 255 in each channel, in red, in green, and blue. And what that gives you is a pure white, no information. I've brought this down a little bit to 250, so 5 points down from pure white, and as you can see there's virtually no difference. That might be still a bit hard, so let's try and bring that down a little bit more. We'll do 245. You can press the tab key to go into each box. Okay. So it's asking us if we want to set these new target colors as default. We will do that. And now we want to zoom in to somewhere in the image that should be a white, but not a completely blown white. I'm going to pick on this bit of white paint on this guardrail here. So it's a little harsh. So we might even try something else, like something in the sky over here. So that's worked okay, but the sky is looking a little too bright for my liking. So I'm going to click on that guardrail again. I think that's a good point to use. Now overall the image looks too cool. It's got far too much blue in it. We're lacking a warmth in these greens, so I'm going to add some yellow back into the image. So we can do that by going into our curves, and you'll see here that we're working in the RGB mode, but we can actually go into the individual channels. So I'm going to go into the blue channel, and anything then added a point, and I'm dragging it in. And you can also control that point using the arrow keys. So what I've done is just pull away a little of the blue in the midtones. That's too much. So I'm just clicking through using the arrow keys. I feel like that's quite a good amount. This is again just the ballpark. A useful thing is the info palette, so you can actually hover over bits of the image, and if you look at the RGB numbers in the top corner there, it gives you the amounts of red, green, and blue. If they're all the same number, it means they're neutral. So that's somewhere between pure black, white, or middle grey. So you can see here that these clouds aren't a pure neutral at all. There's 186 red, 92 green, and 208 blue. So it's still a bit too blue in the sky there. So we can go back into our curves. And we can go to the blue channel. And we can actually adjust the clipping of that blue channel. So at the moment, the clipping point for the brighter end, the white end, you can see that that's the white point because of this little slider here. We've got to use the arrow keys. I've selected it, and we've got to just back off there a little bit. Now if we go back to our info palette, we can see that the blue's backed off a little bit, and the red and the green have also been boosted. So that's got us in a pretty good ballpark for that image. And if I just cycle back through to where we were, so we opened the image, we rotated the canvas, we flipped it horizontal, we inverted it, we applied a curves layer, and then we modified that curves layer. So we set the white point, the black point, and the grey point, and then we individually adjusted that blue channel. And so that's the best way to scan and convert color negative, in my opinion.